we must stop forcing things. All of this forcing that we are doing is in service to our growth, but in actuality, it's inhibiting our growth. Now, this is one of those things where it's a very fine line we need to walk. I think there is almost a time and place where one thinks that they need to force. You're in a bad place with bad habits and you want to get out. And you think that you need to force your way out, which is a reasonable assessment of your situation. But just bear with me and contemplate or just imagine the idea that you really don't. That in actuality, the fact that you want out, the fact that it feels so natural to get out, means you don't have to force it. Yes, it might be hard. Just because something's hard doesn't mean you're forcing it. And I think that's where we get confused. We Something becomes hard and we think that, I need to like will this done. I need to force myself to overcome this to get this done. But I think we really just need to stop thinking that so much and feel more. Feel how natural it feels to maybe go against what used to be the flow, to change. When I was first starting to go down this philosophical journey, I mean, it was a complete 180 from my old life, but it was so natural. It was so easy. Anyone looking at me was always admiring my discipline to read, to write, to go to the gym, to eat healthy, to do these things, but it was just so natural for me. It was so easy. It was like what I was supposed to do. And I didn't even consider it any of the things until like I didn't consider it discipline, hard work until people, would say it. And I allowed myself to believe that I was disciplined, that I was doing hard work, but now I see that really wasn't the case. And that's really never been the case with me. It's always just been this natural flow of this is what it feels like I should do. And as I said, it's a fine line because there's an idea that, I want to do this, but it feels more natural to do this. Though this may be harder, it feels more natural. My conscience won't berate me so much, but I want to do this. And that's what I mean by you don't force it. You know, I'm in this place right now where I'm recently been trying to force things too much. I've been trying to force writing. I've been trying to force reading. I've been trying to force going on walks. I've been trying to force this life that I used to live. When I used to or earlier in the journey, it was so natural for me to just walk for 4 hours, read for 4 hours, write for a few hours, make videos for a few hours. Like it was just like it was so easy, it was so natural, it was so enjoyable. And then now it's like I try to force that. And that's kind of what I want you guys to understand is it goes back to the Carl Jung quote where he says, what got you here is now preventing you from getting you there. And that's why we can't force anything. You can have this idea of what pushes the needle for you in life, but that only pushed the needle in a past version of yourself with different goals, with different aspirations. This is a whole new area. And the only way you can really understand, really come to know what you should be doing is to feel it out. What feels natural? And like I said, it could be hard. It could be extremely hard, but it's about, does this feel natural? Does it feel like I should be doing this? Because it's not about what it looks like. If I spend all day, reading, writing, etc., for what I'm trying to accomplish, it might look like a productive day. But in actuality, if it's not what felt right, it wasn't. Maybe that day should have just been spent in a pool or listening to some podcast that I find interesting. You know, when I was traveling around Asia, I don't know, I was more in a flow of doing things naturally. If I didn't want to do something, I just kind of wouldn't do it. And it was interesting because I know there was plenty of times where I wanted to write and I was like, maybe not. I don't really have any ideas per se. And then I naturally felt like, I'll just read. I'll just read some fiction, which is also something I used to say never to do. And I think past version of me, it was good. It was good that me 2 years ago never read fiction. But I think it got to a point where it inhibited my growth. Where if I just read fiction, I would have saved so much time. I would have not done so many things that I regret, so on and so forth. So no, I would read fiction, and then one sentence in, I'm getting there's a line, a quote, something's worded, it said something, and then I have inspiration, and I put the book down and I start writing, and that's kind of what I want you to see. We may feel like we need to do this thing because that's the thing that we're trying to pursue, that's who we want to become, so on and so forth. But if it doesn't feel natural, why do it? Why do it? I mean, things change. It's hard sometimes to realize that maybe all the work you put in this one area, that's no longer the person you want to be. But sometimes it's not even that deep. Sometimes it's just, like I said, I want to write, but I don't have any ideas. So I go to reading and then I immediately get an idea. But if I fought that, if I said, no, I'm a writer, I need to force this, I need to sit down, I need to I need to wait till, it hits me, then nothing would have happened. I would have got frustrated, burnt out, would have ended up doing something, I regret, probably doing something foolish, wasting time. And that's why we need to not force. That's why, as I was saying earlier, there's this point in our life where it feels like we need to force things. When you can see who you want to become, you can see how far away you are from that version of yourself, and you think the only way there is by imposing your will on the universe, enforcing everything. And to a certain degree, that's true. But like I said earlier, just allow yourself to realize how natural it all feels. How it's like you're just like flying through these things that people would consider work. And that's how you know when you're in your vocation. That's how when you know you're aligned with your nature, when you're doing what feels right, when you're doing what's natural, is when you're just gliding through these things and people are saying, "Oh, you're working really hard." And you're just like, I'm playing. Like I'm at play. Like this is so fun. This is this is what I want to do with my free. Like this is what I couldn't imagine doing anything else. This might as well be heaven. That's when you know you're living with your nature. That's when you know you're becoming who you're meant to become. That's when you know you're not forcing. And like I said, this can be hard. Just because you're playing doesn't mean it's not hard. Yeah, there's this flow state that comes, but at times, of course, it'll be hard. And that's when you have to feel. That's why I'm so, I guess like bullish on feeling instead of thinking, because it's so hard to know. It's so hard to know what to do. It really is. But it seems so easy to feel what to do. And, if say you say you're writing and you want to be a writer and you're writing for an hour and then it starts to get really hard. You're like, ah, man, should I keep going on? And you feel it out. You say, it feels like I should keep going. Even though it's hard, even though I think I should stop. And then other times you could be writing and it could feel great. And you could say, maybe, oh, should I keep going? You're like, yeah, it feels good, but it doesn't feel right. Maybe I should stop. Maybe I should give myself some distance from this. Maybe I should go do something else. We shouldn't be forcing life. Life's way too uncertain. Our path is way too uncertain. What we want, we don't know what we want in reality. Think about what you wanted a year ago, and then a year before that, and then a year before that. 3 different things just popped into your mind. And if they're close to the same thing, the nature of the want changed, I bet. Or at least you had a million different wants in between that you were contemplating, that you were saying, maybe I want this, maybe I want that. That's why we have to feel. That's why we have to trust in these feelings, that they're giving us what we need, not what we want. Because who really cares what we want at the end of the day? Our wants change all the time. I want what I need, so in the future I can just be content. In the present I can be content. But when you're just chasing these wants over and over and over again, but there's also wants are good also. I don't, I guess I used to be more like stoic and monkish, I guess, in the ideas of, don't have wants, don't have desires, but now I understand these are the gifts of life. I mean, it's like a sign of depression when you don't want anything, when you have no desires. This isn't good. And nobody really does. The monks who are, in nirvana, like they say they don't want anything, but it's such a lie. They're so full of shit. And sure, they're probably wise. Sure, they do things that almost no one else in the world can do, but doesn't mean they're not full of shit sometimes. Wants, desires, ups, downs, feeling, love. This is the meaning of life. To not have any of these things, if we entered the game of life and we were told you will have no wants, you'll have no desires, you'll never know hardship, you'll never know triumph, you'll never know love, you'll never know pain, you'll never know hate. I mean, it wouldn't even be considered life anymore. I don't know what you'd be playing, but it wouldn't be life. It wouldn't be life. But that's not the point of this video. The point is just the forcing. And as all these videos are, it's always what I'm dealing with. And I've been forcing too much. There's this person I want to become. There's these things I want to do. And sometimes I can get into the flow state where it all just happens naturally and I don't beat myself up for things. And then other times I think it needs to be done tomorrow, today, right now. And that's when creativity dies. Creativity doesn't want you to put these boundaries on it. It doesn't want you to put this schedule around it. It doesn't want you to tell you it needs to be done. Creativity, divine inspiration, these things, they don't work in your own time. They don't I forget where I heard this, but it's something along the lines of I don't know. I'm not even gonna get close. You probably won't even understand what I'm talking about if you knew the original thing I'm thinking of. But it's like along these lines of if you like, we're all going towards where we need to go, but we need to drop our image of what that looks like. I can have this image that I want to be this person, but I also have an image of the path. And if we just allow ourselves to become who we are, we get to that spot. If we if our need is accurate, if we've accurately read ourselves, but our path will not look the same. We may get here, but we wanted to go this, but we had to go like this, and then we. I think it was in like the Steve Jobs. No, no, I think it was in what's his name? Like Jim Carrey's commencement speech. Yeah, it definitely was good commencement speech. If you haven't watched it, um, but yeah, he's like, we need to drop like our cares for what it looks like, essentially. So we want to be there in 5 years. Okay, it takes 10 years. We want to take the left. Okay, we take the right. If we end up at the same place, And if the journey is better, we just have to have faith. We just have to follow it. We can't force things. You can't force things, but you also do need to have high agency. Like I said, things should be hard. Life isn't easy. You do have to force things at times. There is the ego, there is things inside of you that don't want you to become who you are. There isn't this like, you can just like close your eyes and walk through life and end up where you were meant to be. But I think if you spend enough time in solitude, if you come to know yourself enough, if you become wise enough, then you can just feel your way through life. And you can just not force things. And you can just, and I don't even think you really need to become wise enough or solitude or read enough. We all know it. Like I said in the beginning, when I first started changing, and even before then, I knew the things that I should be doing. And yeah, it was hard to do them, but it's hard to explain, but it almost felt like it was natural. It was just the natural flow of life for me to stop engaging in these activities, for me to stop doing this thing. Sure, like I said, it was hard. Changing habits is always hard, but it just feels so natural. And that's how you know you're walking the right path. When it feels natural, when it feels right, when you just feel yourself, when you don't have to force it. So stop forcing it.